It's me, episode 52 of the W.I.L.L.I.W show, which stands for Wrestling is Life. Life is Wrestling. Now, on today's show, I wanted to do my 10 worst injuries in wrestling, and I've had a few, but these are the ones that I would say are my worst. So anyway, one time in Godrich, I was wrestling Mike Stevens, and he went to do some kind of move on me, kind of like a flapjack thing. He had me on his shoulders, and then he put me face first. And when I landed, I hit my finger, the rest of my hand was flat like this, but my one finger went like this, and it bent it back so far, and my whole hand was blue, and I didn't pull a Sin Cara, folks. I finished the match, but at the time it didn't hurt because my adrenaline was going, but after, it hurt so bad for 3 weeks, and I could barely even use my hand. The next one was when I was wrestling Sean Spears in Cambridge, and I fell out of the ropes. I was sitting on the rope, and he went to kick me, and I fell backwards and did a back somersault, and I hit the back of my head on the corner of those chairs, the ones that have a cushion here and then the two metal bars here, and the very corner of that metal hit me in the back of the head, and I got up, and everything was yellow, and I was definitely knocked out for a couple seconds, and after that I had to go get some stitches, and I had a bad concussion, and they even did an MRI scan on me, and the doctor was like, you need to wake up every couple hours, set your alarm, make sure that you're okay and stuff like that. And I had some really bad headaches for a while. And then for Rogers TV taping in Kitchener, I was wrestling in a 6-man elimination match. I've talked about this on a couple episodes. And I went to do a drop kick on Eric Carney and Hardcore Hick off the apron. So I kicked them, but I wasn't able to turn over, and I hit the back of my head. And I don't remember anything else. Joe Dog Halem, he was one of the managers in the match, and he said he came over to me, and my eyes were rolled into the back of my head, and there was a puddle of blood, and he said I was snoring. And then I guess the ambulance was called. One of the fans lent Joe Dog his cell phone, and he called the ambulance, and they came, and they were talking to me, and they stretchered me out of the arena, and the fans were chanting Cuba for me. And apparently I was talking to the paramedics, but I don't remember any of that, because to me, I woke up in the ambulance, and I was like, where am I? What happened? They're like, oh, you knocked yourself out in the match. They're like, don't you remember? You've been talking to us for 10 minutes. And I was like, I have no idea. So apparently the lights were on, but no one's home. And I just remember Geza coming up to the ambulance and looking at me and shaking his head in disgust. So then I went to the hospital, and I guess I had landed on my shoulder really bad. And they're like, oh, you broke your collarbone. We're going to have to put some screws. Can you stay around in the morning for surgery? Well, I was planning on a couple days after this going on a trip to BC. So I was like, well, I got to get the cameraman home. I'll come back in the morning. Of course, I never went back. And my shoulder and my collarbone got better. And in the back of my head where I'd landed on a metal floor, nothing sharp. But yet I had landed so hard that I had busted the back of my head open. And the guy's like, we're going to have to put a couple staples in there. Do you want, the stuff to numb it? And by this point, it was 4 in the morning, and I just wanted to go home, and I was just like, just do it. So they were just like, put the staples in, and I was already in so much pain that it didn't really... So yeah, that was that. So I went on my trip to BC, and then I came back and got the staples pulled out. The next one was, I was in practice, and we were trying to do a practice match. I was wrestling this guy that we called Uncle Mike, and... we were trying to work on, doing basic matches, but without doing, any talking, just feeding off each other and giving each other signs. And I was standing like this, and I was, yelling at some fake person in the crowd, and he came up behind me and schoolboyed me, which was really simple. So I went back, but because I was up on my toe on this foot, when I fell back, this knee just, went forward, and it hurt so bad. I heard, some kind of pop. And I tried to stand up, and I just, fell down. So they carried me out of there, and then Lars Phoenix and a couple of guys took me down the street to the hospital, and they did some, x-rays on it, and they said that I pulled some, an MRI, or not MRI, ACL or something like that, and I had to get, this full leg cast and crutches for a couple months, and it really sucked because I missed training and everything. The next one, I was wrestling in Brantford. I can't remember who was in the match, but I think it was a multiple-man match. I remember Rip Impact was in it, and I just remember someone, I can't remember if it was Rip or not, I was on the outside, and someone climbed to the top, and went to do it like a flying body press on me, and I was standing on the outside. So like I caught them, but then when I fell back, I like smashed the back of my head on like the hard like gym floor. And I don't remember the rest of the match. And I remember there was a couple other wrestlers that were not wrestling that time, and they were like, after the match, they're like, "Are you okay, dude? Like, you smashed your head so bad." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Like, I'm fine." But the next like couple weeks, I had like the worst headaches, and I kept forgetting things, and I had to like start writing stuff down. Another time back in BC, I was wrestling Shane Davis, and at the end of the match, Eddie Osborne was coming in and gonna do like a diamond cutter on Shane Davis, like after the match. And I was just laying there, and he went to do this diamond cutter, and when he fell down, like he did the RKO basically, his heel, because I was just laying there with my eyes closed, the heel of his foot smashed me like right in the nose. And in my whole life up until this point, I had never had a nosebleed, and I just remember like it was bleeding and it pushed it right in, and the blood was like really dark red, and I was like, oh no. And I remember because I was just about to go back to the wrestling school, so I had to go. I went to the doctor, and they said I needed reconstructive nose surgery. So I got the surgery, and then I went to the wrestling school 2 days later. I flew out to Ontario, and I remember in like the third practice, I got elbowed in the nose some like very lightly, and they had like these stitches that eventually they said that they would just deteriorate and everything would go back to normal. And I remember I got elbowed, and then I was in the shower, and I remember it was bleeding again, and all the stitching fell out. And to this day, I can only breathe through like one of my nostrils, and I can't smell very good ever since then. And another time, I was wrestling Lance Malibu in this pure violence match, and it was a simple move. He like threw me into the corner, and he ran in and did like a stinger splash. Well, when he did it, his knee like caught me in the ribs the wrong way, and it knocked the wind out of me so bad, and I like couldn't even breathe or talk, and like for the almost the rest of the match, and I was like in so much pain, and for like about a month after that, it hurt every time I breathed, and I had to sit a certain way on the couch, and it really hurt, and I ended up drop kicking him so hard off the top rope to the outside after he said that he was knocked out for a couple seconds. So I guess we both gave it to each other in that match. The next one, I was wrestling 21st Century Fox, and this was in Welland, Ontario. Chuck the Butcher Sims was like doing an outside barbecue wrestling show, and I had wrestled Mike Hart earlier, and then I was wrestling the Fox, and it was just a simple thing. I was on all fours, and she stomped me on the back, and I fell down. And when I did, I like hit my penis so hard, like it was just dead set on, and it hurt so bad, and my balls like swelled up. And I used to, under these pants, I used to wrestle with boxers underneath. And I learned my lesson from that time, because then, like it could swing around, and it wasn't. Now I wear like the tight underwear because it holds everything in place, and that hurts so bad. Like when I would go pee and stuff for the next couple days, it was very painful, and that was the worst injury I've ever had on the groin. The next one is I was wrestling Chris Chambers in Brantford, and me and Jesse Jones were in this big feud. So when it looked like I was gonna go up the top rope to like try and finish him off, and I was like standing on the apron, and Jesse Jones snuck up behind me and grabbed me and powerbombed me through like this announce table, and it seemed alright at the time, and I was laying there. And then when I tried to get up, I was like, I couldn't stand up straight. My back like seized up on me, and I was like in so much pain. And I remember I worked at a golf course, and this was on a Sunday, and the next Monday I went in, and I had to cut the grass, and I was like this, because I couldn't stand up all the way straight, and they were getting fed up with me, because we wrestled 2 times, Sunday and Thursdays, Cambridge and Brantford, and I was always hurt, and like couldn't do my job properly, and I got a final warning that that was it, I couldn't do my job anymore, then they were going to fire me. So I ended up going to the hospital, which happened to be right next to the golf course, and getting like some kind of x-rays on my back, and they're like, oh, it's just bruised, but I honestly, I could not stand up straight for at least 4 or 5 days. The next one was, I was wrestling this practice match I can't remember who it was against. It was like either against Mike Stiers or Ozzy from Australia or someone. And for some reason in the wrestling gym, there was like a mug there, like a coffee mug. But it was like, it was not right by the ring, it was over in the corner somewhere. Well, our match ended up getting carried away and we were wrestling on the outside. And I did this thing and I fell down on my shin, and I wear shin pads too. And I landed on the mug and it broke, like, and those are the thick, thick mugs. And so it broke and everything was bleeding, but I didn't even feel it at the time. So after the match, I was getting changed and I was taking off my gear, and all of a sudden there was like this huge pile of blood coming out. And then I noticed the mug too, and I was like, what happened? So I went and looked around, and there was this broken mug. And to this day, I have like this huge scar on my shin right there where that happened. And so those are like the 10 ones that I really remember were like the worst injuries that I feel I've had. A couple other ones not from wrestling. One time, our friends in high school were doing like a skateboarding video, and they wanted us to do some stunts for it. And my one friend grabbed one of those like really hard plastic milk crates, and he hit me over the head with it. But when he did, he hit me like with the corner of it, and it like put an indent in my head, and blood was pouring everywhere. And this one girl was like trying to stop the bleeding, but it was also our graduation party from high school. So I just decided I wanted to keep partying, and I wasn't gonna go to the hospital. So I went the next day, and the doctor was like hot at me. He's like, "You should have come right away. Now we can't stitch it up." And they were like pouring this stuff on my head, like probably like the stuff that makes it so there's no germs or whatever. And they had to like pull the hair. It was inside. It had gone inside the cut, like pushed in my head, and they had to like pull it out. And it was so painful, and it started bleeding again. And to this day, my head has a little like bump in it, like a little road bump in it. And another time I was with my friend, and I wasn't wrestling, and he was dropping me off, and I was in the back seat, and he stopped at the stop sign to let me out, and he wasn't at a complete stop, and I opened the door and went to step out of the car, and like I said, he wasn't completely stopped, so the back tire rolled up onto my foot, and I'm like, dude, get off, and he's like, what? And I'm like, you're on my foot, and he's like, what? And I'm like, back the car up, and I'm like freaking out. And so I ended up like fracturing my heel, and I wrestled the next day in Port Alberni. And the most recent one is I took the cameraman to Sky Zone Trampoline Park, and I paid for an hour, and we had 2 minutes left, and I was like, I'm done, I'm pretty tired. And he was like, come on, Dad, there's only 2 minutes left. So I was like, all right. So then I was bouncing, and my friend were there, and we were breaking the rules, and I was trying to go on his square, and we were trying to like double bounce each other up, and he double bounced me really high. And I went to land back on my square, but I wasn't going to quite make it, and I was going to hit the middle barrier. So I tried to like spread my legs and land on both. But when I did, I like landed all the weight on this ankle first, and then I just like rolled it over so bad. And that was like 3 months ago. And yeah, so I broke my ankle there. So those are the worst injuries I've had in wrestling, plus a couple other bonus injuries. So yes, people that say it's fake, it's ridiculous. My body still feels it to this day, some of the ones. There's a couple other really good ones, but I'll do another list one day. But this is episode 52 of The W.I.L.L.I.W Show. Remember, like or you get a leg drop. Comment or you get a clothesline. Subscribe or you get a suplex. I'm your host, Elian Habanero. I love wrestling. Cuba!